Will interest rate cuts save Perth's housing market? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heise here and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. Still working through my stein of coffee when I thought we would have a look at this article about Perth's housing market. Now before we jump into this, because well, anyone who's familiar with this channel or is watching a lot about property and real estate on YouTube knows that Perth is in a lot of trouble. Before we jump into that, let's have a bit of a look at just the Australian economy and the economy of Western Australia, because that'll give us a bit of perspective to understand what is going on here and to question some of the claims that are being put forward, particularly from real estate agents. How many times have you seen an article from a local rag where it's a real estate agent talking up these fantastic opportunities that people need to rush and buy because they're about to go up? How often have you seen that? And what's the basis of it? Their personality. Their personality. Now, I think it's important that we talk about these things and people understand that the headlines and what's being put in front of them often is only one slice of the picture, and we need to look at everything contextually on a broader perspective to get a bit of a better understanding. Now, if you think that's important, please share it with your friends, your family, your neighbors on social media, so you can discuss it at your next barbecue or when they're over to watch the footy. Because otherwise, people will just read the headline and jump on it. So guys, let's have a look. This is from the Observatory of Economic Complexity, and it's an overview from 2017 of the Australian economy. You can see here just all the different resources that we're exporting. We're not a very complex economy, guys. We're a producer of, natural resources and farming and those type of things. But we look at what we're importing, and we'll scroll further down here, to our destinations. China is our number one destination. We are very dependent on the state of the Chinese economy. Now, some of you may have been aware, there's a little tiff happening between the United States and China at the moment, and that is having an impact on the Chinese economy. Now, our treasurer is pinning his hopes that domestic demand for our resources will, keep Chinese demand for our minerals and food products up. That's what he's hoping, because it has a flow through for the rest of the economy. But, is that a smart move, or is it just blind hope? Now, another thing to realize is Western Australia. Western Australia. This is the value of, Western Australia's resources. Aluminium, gold, nickel, petroleum, other, and iron ore. 61% of our exports to China, and at the time of this data, was at $85 billion. 61% of that comes from Western Australia. Western Australia is even more dependent on the Chinese economy than the rest of Australia. Okay? So, I know there's a separatist movement in Western Australia, and I'm concerned that, if they do separate, they're going to be in trouble eventually. When times are good, but when times are bad, times are bad. And this all feeds into Perth's housing market. Now, John Adams and Martin North have looked at this. So has Robbie from the CEC, with a lot of the suburban areas there where they're just houses are for sale, they're plummeting, and there's a lot of issues there. And social issues are flowing on from that. So let's have a look at this article. Perth's housing market is still lagging behind and would take more than a rate cut to fix things. Well, yes. Yeah, it will. It definitely will. So, when the board of the Reserve Bank of Australia meets today, investors expect it will make history by cutting the cash rate to below 1%, the third rate cut this year. So as I'm recording this, guys, at 9 o'clock, and I will just jump on the RBA website here, and, they haven't done the rate cut yet. We'll find out when they do it. Let me know in the comments if you think it's going to happen or not. Let me know. I bet most of you are probably preparing for it. So in previous cycles, interest rate cuts have stimulated the housing sector, as lower borrowing costs tempted first-home buyers and investors into the market, with flow-on effects to building approvals over time. Or yet, building approvals are at a low, and what we'll do is we will bring up trading economics, and we'll just jump over here to have a look at the Australian data, because this is important, because just how drastic the decline in building approvals has been is something that people need to be aware of. Building permits, here we go. Look at that, down 9.7%. So yeah, it's not looking too rosy in the construction sector. I was talking to a viewer who lived in WA, and he said he's had the best commutes into the city in a long time. That just tells you as well how it's all going if you can drive into the city really easy. So, but while house prices in Sydney and Melbourne appear to be rebounding, a different story is unfolding in Perth. So they appear to be rebounding, yes, over one or two portions, but it's a different market there too. A housing oversupply and sluggish migration rates, a legacy of the mining construction boom, have trumped cheaper borrowing costs in the WA capital, according to Bankwest chief economist Alan Langford. Demographics and population growth trends are overwhelming the benefits of low and stable interest rates, although we are now seeing a little bit more of an acceleration, he said. Well, yes, I mean, not to be rude, but why do people move to WA? Everyone I know who went over there was for the mining boom. We even put some fee proposals in for some jobs over there, some mines. So yeah, it was all just for mining and resource. The problem is that acceleration in the population growth rate to 1% in the year to March is well below the 25-year trend of 1.7% per annum. So it's also well below the state's peak population growth rate of 3.5% recorded in late 2008, which coincided with a run-up in house prices. During that time, spending in WA households grew by an average of 6.7% each year in the 5 years to June 2008, compared to just 1.1% for the past 5 years. We've got to remember, here in Perth, the last real surge in prices was between 2001 and 2007, BIS Oxford Economics Executive Chairman Robert Mello said. Prices went up nearly 200%, so it was a phenomenal increase. Prices got to within 10 to 15% of median house prices in Sydney. That is insane. This is Perth, guys. Perth. He said, while recent population growth figures were promising, the overhang of new housing was still being absorbed. So it'll be still some time, I believe, at least another 6 months, before we start to see some improvement in demand in response to the underlying population growth fundamentals, as well as a very attractive interest rate environment. Perth has been so severely oversupplied, you've sort of just got to let it run out. It takes a while to self-correct, basically. Well, there you go. How many people are going to be stuck in negative equity over in WA? That's the big question. While building approvals for homes and apartments have more than halved since their peak in 2014, the decline in population growth left a supply overhang, which is still being absorbed. And we're going to start seeing that in other parts of the country. Let me just bring up this reminder here to everyone, and I've been referring it to a few videos here. This is foreign investment in housing. It's not just in Sydney and Melbourne, guys. Look how high it was over in 16, 17. From 14, 15, look, it shot up. Perth was the go-to. Mining boom. You couldn't lose money. You couldn't lose money in real estate. Real estate always goes up, guys. Remember that. It always goes up, guaranteed. Guaranteed. Always goes up in fiat, not in gold. So we're now well into our deepest and most prolonged downturn in dwelling construction since at least the early 80s. And of course this means some of the oversupply has been absorbed by lesser new supply, he said. The demand side's just coming on very gradually. So economists say migration and jobs is the solution. But why would you migrate to WA? I mean, according to the REI of WA's Deputy President Lisa Joyce, there are 4 key drivers for Perth's property market: the cost of finance, affordability, jobs growth, and population growth. Unless we see all 4 of those drivers in play at one point in time, we really don't see great growth in demand, Ms. Joyce said. The timing and the extent of the next growth in the property cycle will ultimately be determined by population growth. So they're doing the same. Does this sound like the same Ponzi scheme that we've had here in Australia for the last 25 years? Wage growth has stagnated since 2000. 18 years, not 25 years. Our infrastructure has not kept up at all. At all. I did a video on water supply and dams. Just look at that. And housing prices have shot up insane amounts. So this isn't going to be natural population growth. You've just got to oversupply. You built too much stuff, guys. People were renting these houses for temporary mining workers too. So we really need to see migration, people, population growth for us to start to see any pressure on the supply of housing. Well, maybe you need to be innovative in how you are addressing this. Maybe there needs to be special economic zones in Perth. The missing ingredient, according to both property forecasters and economists, is employment. Well, yes, that's it. Everything else is pointless. You're not going to migrate over there and go in public housing. You're not going to be having any effect on the property prices if you can't afford to work or can't find a job. Figures from ABS show WA's unemployment rate was 5.9% in the June quarter, behind Queensland and equal to South Australia's, among the mainland states, just months after it reached its equal worst level in nearly 2 decades. So here we go. Well, and remember, this is the RBA or the ABS's unemployment statistics, which is different to Roy Morgan's. So meanwhile, the unemployment rate rose to 9.2%, more than double the rate recorded in 2008, just prior to the GFC. You can't suddenly attract a lot more people in the state without the jobs being here, Mr. Muller said. It's a long way to come if you're from the eastern seaboard without a job opportunity. Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. What I will do for, Australia, guys, Australia's a big country. It is a big country. And I will just bring up our Google Earth here to show, foreign viewers. We're talking about Perth, which is over here. And we're talking, the east, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne here. Okay, that is a huge trip. I remember I had a friend at university, Japanese guy. He wanted to tour the whole country in 2 weeks. He wanted to drive around Australia in 2 weeks. Yeah, he had no idea. It's really funny. It's really funny. So that's not just, not like going from Gold Coast to Brisbane to try and find work. Curtin University Professor of Economics, Rachel Ong, said slow wage and jobs growth was a major impediment to the housing market's recovery. There are more and more people on casual, short-term, insecure contracts. And I think those labour market issues are actually quite important. Business investment points to a slow turnaround. Despite the demographic challenges facing WA, market observers say there are positive signs for the state's economy. In the June quarter, business investment rose 0.8%, underpinning a 19.8% increase in spending on machinery and equipment, according to ABS figures. The Bureau noted that continued investment in automation by mining drove the spending increase. Okay, is that going to affect the housing? Okay, how much of that equipment is actually manufactured in Australia? It's manufactured in Perth. Can someone let me know? I'd bet a carton none of it is. That's going to have a negative impact on housing, particularly when you've got driverless trucks. The economy in Western Australia is always driven by business investment, Treasurer Ben Wyatt said. You are seeing the business sector doing what it should be doing and what actually drives job creation in Western Australia, and that is the private sector getting back into spending on itself. Mr. Wyatt said the state government did not have an enormous range of levers to stimulate the subdued housing market, but said it would consider using those within its control. But some economists say economic stimulus for the housing sector is not necessary at this point in the cycle. In 2 years' time, if there's no signs of recovery happening in residential construction, I would say that might be a time when the government have got to do in terms of providing stimulus, Mr. Miller said. We'll need to see a further picking up in mining investment. That'll start to encourage stronger population growth in the state, and I believe that over the next 2 years, we'll start to see that. But will that be a quick recovery? I would say unlikely. But if the investment is in automation, will that have any effect on housing? I would, it doesn't seem, intuitively it doesn't seem like it would. It does not seem like it would. Let me know what you think, guys. Are you heading off to Perth to purchase some houses? What do you reckon? What about the effect of the continued trade dispute between China and the US, particularly with how much of our iron ore is coming from Perth as well, and our LNP, our liquid gas? It'll be interesting to see. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Please share the content, like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, chuck me a couple bucks at Patreon and Subscribestar. I really appreciate your support. and I will see you all later today. Take care.